AniMay! Hello everyone, my name is Derek and welcome back to AniMay on the Netflix Knowhow. Today we have Miss Hokusai, an anime film about the famous Japanese artist Hokusai. At least, I think he was the famous one. The movie technically follows his daughter and not him so much, so maybe she was the famous one? I feel like I should look this up. Okay, so Hokusai was a Japanese artist who lived during the Edo period in Japan, and he is most famous for a series of woodblock prints that he created. So I guess this film could technically be considered a biography of his life, although, as I said, the film actually follows his daughter and not him. The reason I got confused about who the film was technically supposed to be showcasing is because she was also an accomplished artist, and it just kind of muddled things up. I mean, it's obvious that this is a film about some kind of significant historical figure, but it's not really made clear if he is the famous one, because they're always talking about how brilliant and influential his work is, but then the film focuses on his daughter and her interaction with their family and all of the other characters. Do you see how this can be a little confusing? Anyway, the bottom line is that this is a film about artists, so you would think that there's going to be a lot of focus on their relationship to their artwork and their influences and the significance of it all. Nope! This is a movie about a dysfunctional family. Granted, one of the most artistically talented and brilliant families ever put to screen, but a dysfunctional family nonetheless. Don't get me wrong, there is a ton of beautiful artistic imagery in this film, but the main focus is definitely on the dynamic of this family, and specifically on the relationship between Hokusai and his daughter Oe. It's interesting because at a very surface level, Oe kind of resents her father. The guy is a complete mess, both metaphorically and literally speaking, and he is a piss-poor excuse of a dad. He's been separated from Oe's mother for some time. He also has another younger daughter who is blind and he refuses to visit her. And the only thing he really seems to understand or even care about is art. It is clear that his obsession with his art is the main reason why he has such a terrible relationship with the rest of his family, and why everything seems to just be kind of falling apart for him. But at the same time, his art really is genuinely beautiful, and it is completely evident that he is immensely passionate about his work. That's ultimately why Oe and everyone else puts up with all of his crap, because that one element of him is so overwhelmingly inspiring. She may hate everything else about him, but that shared passion for art is ultimately what brings them together. It's basically their way of showing their love for one another, even if that particular aspect has led to a pretty messed up dynamic between them. Oe also shares a really emotionally touching bond with her younger sister, who, as I mentioned before, was born blind. The little sister is such a sad character because she has essentially burdened herself with this lifelong sense of guilt because she feels like she was born broken. She thinks that because she's blind and is therefore unable to see her father's artwork, she thinks that he doesn't love her and that she has somehow ruined his life. And again, it doesn't help that Hokusai doesn't even take the time of day to visit his daughter. It is genuinely heart-wrenching, and I appreciated that the film does not use her character as a cheap way to draw out tears. I actually think that the best scenes in the entire film are the scenes between Oe and her blind little sister. And this is coming from a film that is completely chock full of gorgeous imagery and beautiful colorscapes. It's just raw human emotion driven by genuine human connection, and it manages to be more beautiful and poignant than any amount of artistic imagery in this entire film. One thing that might be a bit jarring for people that watch this movie is the structure of the narrative, in the sense that there isn't one. Miss Hokusai is not a film that has a strong central story arc. Rather, it's told through what are essentially a series of short vignettes that are loosely tied together in terms of theme, but don't necessarily have a lot to do with one another. I noticed this about halfway through the film when Hokusai and her daughter go to visit a geisha, and then the scene ends, and I suddenly realized that this scene had nothing to do with anything that had happened before it, and it didn't seem to be pointing towards anything that was going to happen after it. It was basically its own little story, complete with its own beginning, middle, and end. It was a weird revelation to have, and it took a little bit of adjusting to, but once I figured that out, it actually allowed me to enjoy the film more knowing what it actually was. I was no longer as concerned about paying attention to all the little details and every little plot point, and instead just focusing on each story within itself and enjoying it for its own purposes. They're not completely random stories, they do all kind of connect together, and they do come together at the end in a sort of pseudo-climax, but that's not really how the film is structured, that's not what the focus is on, it's really about the individual stories told within it. I thought that this particular creative choice worked out fine, but I can also understand how this might make the movie feel a little bit small and underwhelming, especially since there's no big climax at the end that we're building to. The movie also starts and ends with Oe giving us a voiceover narration just to fill us in on the backstory and give us some exposition so we understand what's going on. This worked well at the beginning, and I appreciated that it kind of provided a sense of circularity at the end because they started and ended the same way, but it felt weird at the end because it didn't really feel like a proper ending. It's difficult to describe, but the way it ends is that we're watching this story and then all of a sudden it just cuts to another narration scene and it's just Oe filling us in about what happened after that and what happens to Hokusai for the rest of his life. And it was just kind of weird. It was like they needed to end the movie but didn't have a proper ending in place, so they just decided to fill in the rest of his life details in about 10 seconds. It can also be kind of hard to get really invested in these characters and the stories because everything is told through these little independent vignettes. There's not a whole lot of connection to them, so you can only get attached so much to something that's about 10 minutes long. Instead of being given these big sweeping character arcs that offer some kind of large transformation for the character in the end, we instead get these smaller moments of growth, which is still satisfying, but it just doesn't leave that same amount of emotional resonance as a larger story might. Although there is one vignette in particular where Oe and her sister are out playing in the snow, and it is, whew, the feels. It makes me feel like a proper human being again. At a certain point, it does seem like all of these little moments are going to come together and culminate into something bigger and truly transformative, but sadly, it just never really happens. Still, all of those little moments are done incredibly well and will leave some kind of emotional impact on you. I do think Miss Hokusai is a genuinely unique biographical film, and I've never really seen another one quite like it. It takes some pretty interesting creative risks in choosing to focus on the daughter of the main subject instead of the subject himself, and also choosing to tell the story through a series of vignettes rather than a large overarching narrative. It's not a complete success, and I don't think that it really had quite the emotional impact that they wanted it to have, but I still found it to be an engaging and entertaining film. If nothing else, this is still a movie about artists, and it is an absolute visual wonder to behold. Miss Hokusai gets a thumbs up. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate every single one of you. I apologize that I've been kind of slow on getting things out this anime month, but don't worry, I'm gonna have a bunch of things up this week to sort of culminate it all in one big shebang, so I hope you tune in and have a good time. Oh, excuse me, I might have to cut that one out. Anyway, Miss Hokusai, it was a good film. It was an interesting film, definitely different. It's not going to be for everybody, but it's definitely visually stunning, beautiful, and really, really emotionally touching. So I would definitely recommend that. Anyway, as always, if you enjoy this content, you can hit that subscribe button down below and be sure to share it with your friends. I would really appreciate that. You can also head over to Twitter and over to Facebook, follow me on there. And as always, if you want to know your flicks, you know where to click. Happy hunting, guys. I'll see you next time.